welcome to each and every one of you for this session. And so I'm going to just jump right in, right? So, Selena, this session is really focused on beyond the workspace, right? So many of us oftentimes, especially for us who are coming in as young professionals, we're usually very primed and our lives really surround about what we do at work. And so it is so important that we can maximize opportunities outside of our jobs, right? So my first question to you is, how can professionals really maximize these opportunities similar to the way you have, especially in many of the things I just mentioned from your bio?
Right. Thank you, Chief, for that wonderful introduction and the question. I'm very excited to speak to you all about this very topic. You're very right that for many of us youngsters, and I'm including myself, once we start working, work kind of takes up a big portion of our lives. And it's hard to kind of imagine finding time for anything else. But it's important to consider how we are contributing and tapping into our community's social capital, right? Because that's kind of like how you will begin to really contribute in a way that's not, you want to be careful in a way that you're not doing extra work, but it's in addition to an extra work that looks like it's an addition to what you're doing at work, but really it's an extension of who you are at work. So at work, you have a prescribed set of to-do list, tasks, expectations of your role, and you may not ultimately have the opportunity to really build on skills you need for what you've envisioned for yourself. So it's really about really tapping into what's outside the workplace that you can build off of, contribute to and build off of, so that at every point in your career, you're 100% you're whole, right? And not just concentrating on one thing at a time.
Absolutely. And I echo those exact points because I think it's so important to be such a well rounded individual. For many of us who had the opportunity to go through college, that's what we were told in undergrad, right? You have to join clubs, you have to be involved, you have to sort of boost your resume because it really does set you apart from other individuals who may have the exact same academic background as you. And so those points are certainly important to lift up. And so with that being said, I certainly want, I mentioned a few things that in your bio. So I really want you to use this time to describe your volunteer positions that you deem important to your career and professional endeavors, right? Why are you involved in the things that you're involved in, and how does that really help you in your professional life?
Okay. I would say that just like you said before, when we start college, the advice is always to get involved and boost your resume. For many of us, we start getting involved just for that reason, for the next stage, so that you are building qualifiers for the next stage. So I'm going to really elaborate on two experiences that kind of helped me change my mindset on that. And that is when I became president for the Graduate Student Organization at the School of Public Health in Albany. That experience, unlike my other student leadership positions, took me from just being a student leader to really learning what it means to lead by serving others, right? Because in that leadership position, I was responsible for advocating for the needs of the student body by being a student rep at the SPH Council. And then on the main campus in the larger graduate student organization body with the other schools, School of Social Work, School of Public Policy, all of that, representing the entire School of Public Health. That's when I began to learn as a leader, I'm not just advocating for what I want. I have to really listen to the students in the School of Public Health, take all of the different needs, all of the different asks, and really synthesize it into making like requests that would be accepted and really realize change. And so that really took me, it gave me the opportunity to really amplify or elevate my leadership skills, right? By learning how to become a servant leader. So in that position, I was more of like serving the student body, and it wasn't about me personally trying to boost my resume. So I really loved that experience. The other experience I would want to highlight with this question is when I served as an AmeriCorps um, um, uh, personnel. AmeriCorps is a service learning organization where you dedicate a year of your life to serving with an organization and contributing your skills to, boost their capacity. I was fortunate to serve in Waterbury, and in that 1 year, as you all know, I don't know who is here with us, but for a lot of our students, when we are in school and we are engaging with communities, whether it's through internships or volunteering, again, it's really about checking the boxes, right? You want to meet the curriculum requirements and you're trying to make the grade, and it doesn't allow for you to really be present and fully immerse yourself in the experience in a way that you can reflect on lessons you're learning. And so with AmeriCorps Service Year, I was able to really, without the pressure of making the grade, pay attention to how to engage community-based organizations and listen to the individuals we were serving through the programs that we stood up. And so that opportunity was also quite remarkable in influencing my career pathway, because those experiences from the different programs, from the different engagement opportunities I had, I was able to amplify those or speak on them, and it informed further like my next steps, right? As far as being a public health professional or health educator, when I think about food security issues, what it means to actual patrons of food banks, what it means to organizations, community-based organizations that are serving at food pantries, away from what we read in journal articles. It was really raw and authentic, active way for me to listen to the community by serving with AmeriCorps. So those two experiences, I would say, have been pretty significant to influencing my professional career.
And Selena, a lot of what you said, I'm sure, resonates with so many of our folks who are in this session. I see a lot of familiar names from the Connecticut Public Health Association, and many of them who have a background in public health. And so, that level of involvement in many different spaces, especially in social service work, I think is so integral. And so, how early in your career did you begin to get involved in these positions, that have sort of helped you get to where you are now?
I think it's just been part of what I do. I have these three things I always try to assess with. I say, in my current experiences, am I serving others, or is this experience teaching me something, right? Am I learning from this experience, or is this an opportunity to share my skill set? And once I think of that and reflect back based on the question you're asking, I think I've always done service work, right? So whether it is fundraising for any cause, you're serving others, right? And then you get to learn about a topic that you knew nothing about before. And then I think as I've grown, I've hit a point where it's time for me to share what I've learned, my skill sets with others. So even in service, I'm giving back by sharing my competencies. So when have I think I would say that it's just been always part of who I am. And for most people in school, I think now schools require community service hours, so it becomes part of like the activities we do in school from middle school, high school. And the key really is that you don't let it fall off, right? You try to find meaning in those experiences and then figure out how to make that part of your community engagement activities as you kind of progress through school and life. So I've always kind of done service work.
Okay, absolutely. And so sort of my follow-up question to that is, one of the other things that you've mentioned that you've been involved in, that I know personally, is you sit on a few boards, right? And so I think that's often, an area that many individuals who may think that they have to be very seasoned in their career to sit on board positions or be elected to a board and serve in that capacity. What is the pathway to a board position? How do you get involved in that space where you kind of serve as a decision maker for an organization?
Mm-hmm. I would first have to say that I am only a little bit well versed in nonprofits boards. So if you talk about corporate boards, I'm not familiar with the semantics of those. But as far as nonprofit organizations, I would say that the way that I got into serving on boards, it's really understanding that to contributing my voice to that decision-making power. And it doesn't matter where you are right now, whatever stage you are right now, there's value in what your experience is. Because even with questions, if all you have to contribute is questions, those questions help inform program development, strategic planning ideas, all of that is important. So how do you even start, or what do you think about, when do you start to think about serving on a board? I would say that you have to think about, for yourself, goals that you've set for yourself career-wise, professionally. So once I started, when my mindset switched from the job I wanted to do when I grow up to how I want to make an impact in the world, it didn't matter if I worked as a doctor, if I worked as an engineer, because I understood that the career vision I had was, I want to serve people in a capacity that they're able to live healthily, doing what they love, and living long term. Organizations whose visions and missions align with that, the vision I have for a career, kind of attracted me in terms of serving, doing volunteer work with them, but also contributing technical skills. So where I know that I have the capabilities to support nonprofit organizations with grant writing, I support that way. Or if they write grants as someone sitting on a board, I'm able to review it and serve the organization that way. But it's important to also recognize that serving on a board is not just about volunteering. It's also about being an ambassador for an organization whose vision or mission you truly believe in. And so with that's what I talk about, that social capital, right? Lending my social capital in terms of whatever brand power I have personally and professionally. If I say that, look at this organization and what the work they're doing, if that is going to bring more eyes to their work, then that's the value I'm bringing. So you serve as an ambassador. So you don't just sign on to serve on any board. You have to truly believe in the mission of the organization. And of course, you have, for the most part, you have a legal responsibility to, as someone who serves on the board, to ensure that they're doing the right thing. So that also means that when you sign on to serve on a board, you're truly saying, I believe in the work that you're doing. And because I'm legally responsible, I'm committed to ensuring that we're doing the right thing to achieve the outcome we've set out to do. So thinking through the process that way will kind of help you start to think about, okay, what organization would I love to support as an ambassador? Start there.
Absolutely. And, I had to think about that myself when I was looking to get involved in more positions that weren't just solely in public health or in the healthcare space, right? I wanted something new, something fresh. And, I was connected to the Copper Beach Institute, right? And their focus is all about mindfulness and the practice of mindfulness. And so, it becomes this bi-directional relationship where I'm learning so many different things from this organization and being serving on the board and also being able to bring forth my skills and help them in many different sectors, such as, helping them sort of draft up their discrimination policy just based on my background as a regional director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I think, again, right, when you're in those positions, like you mentioned a little bit, it's so important it's a give and take, right? So you're not just gaining from being on the board, you're also bringing your skills to serve in said board positions. I'll take a quick pause and I want to open up the floor to see if there are any sort of burning questions from anyone who's in attendance for Selena, or just kind of any comments or feedback or about how to get involved outside of the workspace, especially if we have any young careers on the call. I know a lot of folks that I know personally on this call who are, very seasoned in the workspace, in addition to Selena, who can also even chime in. You can go right ahead. If you have your hand up.
Hi, thank you again, and apologies. Usually I like to be on, on camera for these things, but the juggle is real when
you love the display picture though.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So two things. I think, Dr. Osei, you were very spot on when you mentioned that no matter what season in your professional journey that you're in, you can still be able to contribute or find a space to either ask questions to help navigate strategic efforts of whatever organization, whether it's private, nonprofit, to just move the needle with public health, positive outcomes or healthcare access. I think the thing that you said that resonated very deeply with me was being very intentional, always doing like a self-evaluation, right? Because the world will come at you in different directions. Like when you're done with school, you want to find a job, and you have to like marry passion with the economics of student loans and whatever else you have going on. And at every point and at every stage, if you're very careful and intentional about reflecting on whatever season you're in, whether you're a mom, you're like wearing multiple hats, which all of us have had to do in this season. This is what COVID has taught us, right? You wear multiple hats, but being very intentional about reminding yourself what your foundational goals were and pivoting back to that, and recognizing and being graceful enough to accept that, okay, so you thought 5 years from college, you would be on this board, you'd be advancing this stage, but it's not looking like that. But in this current capacity, what relationships can you form? What ways can you use what you have learned? Because every job, every connection will teach you something, whether about yourself or what you don't want to be. So how can you move that forward? And when you said that, I was like, yes, indeed. Absolutely, but we don't usually take the time to reflect because we're a society that's like, we have to churn, right? We have to churn outcomes and we don't pause and reflect. And for me, thank you for that, saying that, Dr. Osei, because that was like, oh, yes, I get it. I don't do it all the time. I should do it for sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for those words, Na. And so I see, and please correct me if I'm saying your name wrong. Is it Dani?
Yeah, it's Dahani.
Dahani.
Okay. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about. I really like the presentation and how the panelists are answering the questions that came up. Actually, I'm an emerging public health professional. Right now, I'm in my second semester of public health. And beside my school, I'm doing different kind of volunteer work. So just to get engaged with the community, because I'm an international student at University of New Haven. So just to gain some, just to see how community works, as an international student, it's very difficult for us to understand what is exactly the issues are. So I'm really thankful that I'm able to get the opportunity to attend this seminar. like webinar, sorry, it's called webinar. So yeah, and I really want to know one thing. Is it fine to get engaged in different field of volunteer work? Like for instance, I'm doing a volunteer work with the Red Cross. And the secondly thing, I'm also doing a volunteer work with the conversing about the COVID-19 vaccine. So which is completely different. So as a public health professional or public health student, is it fine to do different contrast things?
Yes, absolutely. That's actually the best way to learn. I love that you started your question by stating why you're volunteering or engaging with the community, and that's the story, right? In order to understand how the community works, you're participating in volunteer activities to give you a breadth and variety, exposure to a breadth of various organizations, the work that they do, and how they take care of communities. So if you were to define your volunteer experience, you will reflect on this period after graduation, or as you kind of formulate your story and prepare for graduation and the workforce. That's exactly the story you tell, right? As an international student coming from a different country, volunteering with different organizations is giving you the opportunity to learn and apply different skill sets in different settings. And that's also how you figure out what you truly like, right? And so it's absolutely okay. And I will also defer to other professionals in the session who can contribute to that. But I really do think that's the perfect way to explore. And by your second year, after a few more classes, you would know exactly what you're good at versus what you truly are passionate about. I always say that I'm a very good student, and it took doing my MBA and taking accounting, even though I passed with an A, to really learn that public health is really what I'm passionate about, right? So we can be very good students, but until you immerse yourself and engage what interests you, you won't find out. You have to kind of explore. And this is the perfect time. It's your second semester in graduate school, so it's completely fine.
Thank you so much, and thank you for answering this. I was juggling with this situation since long, but you really helped me to see what and making me feel that I'm going in the right direction. Thank you so much, Lena. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dahani, for that question. And to Selena's point, I know for me, my love for public health started in undergrad in my junior year, right? When we did an alternative spring break at UConn, and I spent a week in Baltimore. For many of you who are public health professionals, you know that Baltimore is the mecca of all things public health. It's, deeply rooted in those spaces. And after that week was when I was like, I want to go get my master's in public health. And I was like, I don't want to go to medical school anymore. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to do. I want to focus on primary and secondary prevention. And that's really where it all started. And that's not something I was familiar about, because really in high school, public health wasn't really a thing, right? And even now is when the world is really learning what public health is, since COVID. And so again, I think that's such a it's really good to sort of explore other options, because you can also transfer skill sets from many different settings into other spaces. So thank you for that question. Thank you so much, Selena, for responding. Denise, you have your hand up, so I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. I think what Selena said was very good about getting from A to B is not always a straight path, because I know for me, my first degree is in biology. I would have never, if you said, Denise, you're going to be a nurse one day, I think I would have laughed in your face. But unfortunately, I did take the leap, because a lot of people saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I said, okay, if I can survive my first semester of clinical in nursing school, then I'm in it for the long haul. And I think like when you're in school, that's when you start developing your voice, learning how to interact with different people. Like you, Chi, you said you went to a place in Baltimore. It's like, even though I went to Rutgers University, I went to Camden campus. Camden in New Jersey is very, when I went, was very harsh, but that campus had the most diversity. And that's where I got to grow and find my voice. And in becoming a nurse, I'm sort of the kind of person, I like to be in the background, but in joining different organizations, people saw something in me and pulled me to the forefront. So that's why I think it's very good to get involved with different organizations. You never know. I tell students that I mentor, everybody has a set of skills that they can bring to the table. Don't let anybody downplay based on your age, or because you don't have a whole lot of credentials behind your name. It's okay if you don't know exactly what you do, you know, when you graduate high school. And I think that's just a part of life. Because I think a lot of people stress on, oh, I have to get good grades, but sometimes they're just grades. It's like, what do you get out of it? I know I wasn't an A student, but I think just being able to comprehend the knowledge that you are gaining in whatever you're doing helps you in the long run. And with COVID, I mean, being a nurse, I left direct patient care, and I was like, you know, I want to use my public health degree, but in reflecting, like you guys said, I was already a public health person without my MPH, just educating the community that I serve, having those questions with my patients. My patients always tell me, I'm glad to see somebody that looks like me providing care. Because we all know the history of minorities in healthcare. And I think we all just have, I think COVID hitting have shown many of us how we have to pivot, because it's like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm leaving oncology. I'm going to become an infection preventionist. And when did I start? January 2020, at the height of COVID in New York City as an IP. And now I'm transitioning back to direct patient care. But I think just building those bonds and just stepping out of yourself and talking to different people, you learn so much about yourself and just life, period.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Denise. You're absolutely right. So the thing with maximizing opportunities, you really are hitting on one of the key points I wanted to make this evening is you don't really know what you don't know until you engage with others, right? Because like I said in the beginning, it's about tapping into your community's social capital, but also contributing to it. So for Denise, for instance, engaging with others might have been what kind of alerted her to a skill set she herself might not have been aware of, right? And pursuing nursing. So that kind of, they gave her that insight into her capabilities. And so that's how she maximized opportunities outside the workplace, which is just being present in the community, engaging others, sharing her story, and listening to other stories. A lot of the times, opportunities that come our way are not ones that we are, especially at the beginning of our career, ones that we are intentionally looking for. It's more or less based on referrals, as you, most of you would kind of be familiar with. By knowing a lot about Chi, what she's capable of, if something comes across my desk, she's the first person I might think of when it comes to building a diversity program, right? Because I know she's well-versed, very capable, and we've served together in this organization for a few years now. And without this commonality of NACI, CT as an organization, and CPHA, there's nowhere else she and I have crossed paths, right? Except being familiar with each other from UConn. So it's very important to recognize that beyond the workplace, we are connecting with our community by establishing ourselves with a professional home. So you join a professional organization and serving in our communities. So we're spending most of our time in school and at work, but our schools, we have professional organizations that mostly meet maybe annually, quarterly, or biannually, right? And it doesn't take a lot to participate and engage. And then you serve, you start by serving. So whether it's a committee that you're joining and supporting their planning activities, and then you learn. So if they put on professional development programs, you attend it and you just take it all in as much as possible. And then eventually it will be time, you have the capabilities, you have the skills to contribute, to share, right? And that would be when you are either serving in the board or you are presenting at in a webinar. And those are all opportunities to build your skills outside of the workplace. So in my regular job, I do presentations, I speak on issues, but it's very particular to the work and the space that I'm in. When my interests are far extensive. So finding those opportunities outside of the workplace and planting myself or positioning myself in such a way that when opportunity comes, I'm prepared to step up and share. It's kind of like how I've maximized those opportunities, right? So thank you for Denise for sharing. Any other insights or questions?
Right. I think, these conversations are so important. And one thing that, you touched a little bit on, Selena, and Nye even kind of, when she first came on, talked about that, is that balance, right? So we know career, personal life, volunteering, all of these different things, sometimes it's very hard to manage. So how do you sort of balance that and prioritize what works for you, what's important, just to make sure that you don't go stir crazy?
Yes, I like that question. It's really about planning, right? I say it sounds like I've done a lot when you read my bio, but it's all at strategic points. I'm no longer a student ambassador for UNESCO. I served for a year with AmeriCorps, and now I'm serving with NACCT. And with the different boards, it's all timed, right? So what do I have? I really assess that statement I made in the rapid fire session about taking the time to reflect, assess the time that you have. Like, so every year, annually, we start the year with resolutions that I don't know about you, I never keep mine, but professionally, I do my very best to keep them. So annually, what do I have bandwidth for this year, right? These are the organizations I'm involved with. I was with NACI. I was in NACI probably 3 years before I actually joined the committee. And that's because when I was ready in that year in my planning, I was like, oh, this year I'm no longer serving with this organization, or I finished school. So I have the bandwidth to join a committee. And so in those leading 3 years, what I was doing with NACI was learning, networking, connecting. And then when that time came, I was like, I have the bandwidth to serve. So I joined the committee. So it's always about being strategic and setting, pacing yourself. But the overall framework, the overall structure is to be involved, right? And so what you can't put aside is your home life. you have to your home life. So, and you have to work. And so the extra stuff, you have to pace yourself, you have to plan. Things get added to the plate, things get taken off the plate, but you being intentional about what you're doing and how it aligns with goals you set for yourself helps you find that balance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm all about that, especially since COVID, because everything is virtual. And so you're significantly more connected at the same time. And you're hopping from one meeting to another Zoom into this into that. And so it definitely can get cumbersome. You also want to ensure you always take care of yourself no matter how involved you are. So I know Na has another question.
Hi, so I have a question, please, Dr. Osei. For most of us, when you think about beyond the workplace, how to sustain, social capital, and I think Denise spoke to this a little bit when she mentioned how, her personal affect is like somebody who is comfortable being in the background and doing the work, right? So can you talk a little bit more about how you hone in on what you think is just like your personal affects, what you think is like something you like to do, and how you translate that into building your capital? Like, because sometimes you don't even know that the thing that you think comes normally to you, or is like the thing that, people will not see it as an asset, can be the very thing that propels you into that dimension of building that social capital. So can you please speak a bit more on that?
Thank you, Na. So that comes with being self-aware, right? Understanding who you are, your personality traits, and how you excel, like the environments that you have to be in to do your best work. Oftentimes, when I work with my mentees, I have them do a personal SWOT analysis, and when they we have a few activities to identify what their strengths are, what they perceive as their weaknesses. And I always say when we are discussing their weaknesses that it has to be within context, right? And I use the example of immigrating here from Ghana. In Ghana, culturally, you walk into a room full of individuals who are significantly older than you. You don't just start talking or taking the lead. There's just a cultural way to communicate by giving them a certain level of respect. When we move to the States, that in workplaces or in school was perceived as me being too quiet or shy. And I really reflected on that a little bit, like, am I shy? I don't think I'm shy, but in a room where I'm the youngest, I don't see how I can be taking the lead, right? So becoming self-aware about that gap meant that I had to communicate with co-workers that, I prefer to have an agenda. If I'm going to be lead, it has to be assigned to me so that I take that on. But based on just how I grew up, I don't feel comfortable addressing you by your first name. Like, once they also understood my perspective of where I'm coming from or why I was the way I am, it became less of a weakness, right? But it also required me adapting to my new environment and sharing that aspect of me so that we understood each other and how to work together. So understanding yourself, reflecting, becoming self-aware of those traits, and taking the opportunity to communicate how best others can work with you, so that you all kind of like are successful, will definitely help you kind of add value to your team, and they also see you in a different light, right? Does that kind of help answer that question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you so much now for your question, Selena. So I know we have about 2 more minutes to spare, so I do want to ask one final question, and then turn it over to anyone else on the floor who wants to sort of lift anything up in conversation. So Selena, how can current professionals find out about some of these opportunities that we've mentioned? So board positions, professional development courses, right? There's so many certificates that we see that are available online for people to just continue the learning, volunteer opportunities, both within their interest or something outside of their career field, just ways to kind of connect outside of your work.
Mm-hmm. So if you're a student, career services, you have an advisor, really leveraging those relationships and those resources to help identify the opportunities. If you're a professional, most organizations, at least for my organization, we have a professional development department that we have access to a lot of opportunities through that. So really asking that your HR business partner, do we have this available to us and how do I access it? But obviously beyond the workplace, joining a professional organization is all you need to do to really access a lot of opportunities and resources. So that's where I would say start from, right? Asking and accessing the departments that have been dedicated to curating a lot of these opportunities in the first place.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So with 1 minute to spare, does anyone have any last minute thoughts and or questions for Dr. Osei before we kind of all head back to the main stage? All right. So with all hearts and minds clear, Selena, thank you so much for being such an esteemed panelist and connecting with our group. I hope this was very rewarding for each and every one of you with the opportunity to participate. Again, we're going to, all of the other sessions are being recorded. With the only limitation is Dr. Morris's session. So that's only going to be shared with non-CCT members, and that was at his own request. But again, you all will be able to see what Cliff talked about, what Innocent and Chelsea talked about, Dr. Tran's conversation. So you will be able to sort of also be looped in that. And again, MCHES and CHES credit is being offered. So certainly, please, I placed it again in the chat if you have those credentials to complete the form to ensure that you get those credits. And again, this was such a really great session. Selena, thank you so much. So on behalf of NACCT, we're going to be transitioning back to the main stage, and then we'll have the opportunity to reveal who the raffle winner is. And then just hear some final words from our speakers, and then we'll take it from there. So this time I will stop recording.